You're a nobody. That's what my daughter said. In front of her friends. On my birthday. You fix toilets. You really think that makes you a man? I stood there holding a half-melted cake, still in its plastic box. The kind they toss in the discount bin after 8 p.m. My wife laughed. The kind of laugh that doesn't echo, it lands. Time you knew the truth, you were always just temporary. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't ask why they waited until my birthday to say this. I just picked up my bag from behind the door, the same one I used when her mother was in labor 27 years ago, and began to pack. My name is Harold Weston, and from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever been erased from your own life, like you were a placeholder in someone else's story? They kept talking behind me, but it all blurred. Voices without weight. Laughter without warmth. I left before the candles were lit. No one followed. I drove without music. Just the sound of my own breathing. Steady, shallow, then suddenly still. 20 minutes later, my phone lit up. 23 missed calls. Same people. Same names. But too late. They had buried something they didn't realize still had a pulse. The calls kept coming. No messages, just missed attempts, like they were hoping I'd pick up out of habit. But I didn't. I drove west, past the highway where we used to take Sunday drives, past the gas station where I taught my daughter how to check oil, past all the places where I had once been visible. The sun had started to drop behind the tree line when I pulled into a rest stop. There was no destination, just distance. And distance was finally doing what words never could. I sat on the hood of my car, watching families pass through. Little moments, a father carrying a tired child, a woman laughing over spilt coffee, all of it soft and distant. Behind me? Silence. Ahead of me? Stillness. I didn't feel free. Not yet. But I felt uncaged. And that was something. At one point, I opened the glove compartment, pulled out an old receipt from a hardware store, one I used to visit every week. I flipped it over and started writing. Not a list. Not a plan. Just names. Not theirs. Mine. The things they took from me, my patience, my strength, my loyalty. I wrote them down like I was reacquainting myself with a man they forgot existed. I didn't hate them. That would have been easier. What I felt was more dangerous. Clarity. They had built a life around me like I was a wall, strong, silent, expected. And now that the wall had stepped away, they were shocked the house could no longer stand. A soft breeze picked up. I folded the receipt, slid it back into the glove box like a contract no one else could see. Then I turned the key again. No destination. No announcement. Just a man finally going where he wanted. Without permission. I found a place, nothing fancy. An old fisherman's lodge 2 towns over. Paid in cash. No ID required. Just a nod from a tired man behind the counter who didn't ask questions. The room smelled like cedar and mothballs. The mattress was thin. The light flickered when I turned it on. It was perfect. Because for once, nothing in the room expected anything from me. No reminders to pick up groceries. No unspoken shame about grease-stained hands. No calendars filled with birthdays I had to plan for people who'd just made mine a funeral. I tossed my bag on the chair, sat on the edge of the bed, and listened to the old radiator tick like a slow, fading heartbeat. This wasn't revenge. This was removal. And in that removal, I started to remember who I was before they rode over me. I took out my phone, not to call anyone, just to scroll through my photos. Dozens of birthdays, vacations, graduations, every frame carefully posed. But behind the smiles, I could now see what I hadn't before. My wife's glance, always a little sideways. My daughter's lean, always toward someone else. And me, always at the edge of the frame, holding the camera, or standing just behind it. I wasn't part of the memory. I was the one making it possible. I powered off the phone, slid it into the drawer next to the bed. Then I opened the small notepad from my glove box, the one I'd scribbled my name into, and I began to write again. You fix toilets. That's what she said. What they all thought. So I wrote something beneath it. A man who knows how to fix things also knows when to walk away from what can't be repaired. I underlined it twice. Because this time, I wasn't the one coming back with tools. By the 5th day, the silence had done something strange. It had started making noise. Not in the room, not outside. Inside them. Because when people are used to your presence, your absence feels like punishment. I hadn't blocked their numbers. I didn't need to. I watched the calls roll in like tides, swelling, crashing, retreating. At first furious, then frantic, then fragile. My wife left a voicemail I didn't listen to. My daughter sent a photo, an old one of us fishing, her little fingers tangled in the reel. The caption read, "I miss this." I looked at it, and then I deleted it. Not out of cruelty, out of necessity, because I realized something in that moment. They missed the version of me that didn't know better. The man who patched broken sinks at midnight without complaint. Who swallowed disrespect and called it love. Who stood at the head of a table, never realizing he was being served last every time. Back at the lodge, I went downstairs. The owner, an old man with a crooked back and a faded ball cap, nodded at me. "You're staying long?" he asked. "Not sure," I said. He grinned. "Sometimes it takes a while to forget what you're leaving behind." I didn't answer. But his words sat with me like an old bruise I hadn't noticed, until someone pressed on it. Later that evening, I walked by the lake behind the property. No shoes. Cold earth underfoot. And I thought about all the things I'd given them over the years. Stability. Shelter. Silence. They'd mistaken it for weakness. But real silence? The kind I carried now? It doesn't beg. It doesn't plead. It waits. And when it finally speaks, it changes everything. The first envelope arrived on a Thursday. No return address. Just my full name, written in handwriting I knew too well, my wife's. Inside, a folded letter. Real paper. Real ink. Like something sacred. "I don't know where you are, but I know you're watching. I'm sorry for what I said. I didn't mean it. We were trying to impress her friends. It got out of hand. Please come home." I read it once. Then again, slower. Looking for the part where she said she meant what she said, just not out loud. But it never came. There was no mention of the years. No acknowledgement of the ways I held that family together like cracked foundation stone. No apology for laughing. Only regret for the consequences, not the choices. I folded the letter neatly, slid it back into the envelope, and burned it in the fireplace beside the lobby. That night, the lake was completely still. No wind. No noise. Just the sound of my own breathing, deeper now. Steadier. I stood at the edge of the dock, looking out over the Blackwater, and I whispered something for the first time in years. "You did good." To myself. Not because I left, but because I finally stopped staying where I wasn't wanted. They didn't miss me. They missed the version of me that absorbed everything and asked for nothing. But that man was gone. Not angry. Not broken. Just finished. Back in the room, I opened the notepad one more time and wrote, "The most dangerous kind of silence is the one that follows understanding." And then I slept. Not to escape anything, just because I finally could. The second envelope came 3 days later, this time for my daughter. No letter, just a photo. Her as a child, standing on top of my shoulders, holding a paper sign that read, "My hero." She was maybe 6, missing a front tooth, wearing overalls. Her eyes said everything her words never had. On the back, she'd written, "I didn't mean what I said. Please talk to me." I stared at it for a long time, not because I felt weak, but because I felt nothing. And that scared me. Because the man in that photo, the one she called hero, was gone the moment she weaponized his worth. At the front desk, the old lodge owner slid me a newspaper. "Thought you might want to see this," he said. Page 3. A small piece about a local restaurant chain having financial trouble. Guess whose name was mentioned? Her boyfriend. The one with the 3 restaurants. The man she compared me to. The one she said made me look small. Apparently, 2 of the locations had closed. The third? Under audit. Suddenly, the man who fixed toilets didn't seem so foolish. I folded the paper, left it on the table. Didn't smile. Didn't gloat. But a strange calm settled over me, like a room that had finally been cleared of smoke. Back upstairs, I took out my notepad and turned to a clean page. At the top I wrote, "Value doesn't vanish. It gets overlooked until it's gone." And below it, I didn't leave to teach them a lesson. I left because they failed the test. I didn't mail a response. Didn't send a message. Because sometimes the most powerful thing a man can do is stay gone. I got a knock on the lodge door. No warning. No call. Just 3 sharp taps like they belonged there. I opened it slowly. It was my daughter. Alone. No camera crew of friends. No perfectly timed apology speech. Just a trembling breath and a paper bag in her hands. I brought you your favorite," she said. "Chicken pot pie from a diner I used to take her to when she had nightmares as a child." I didn't invite her in. I stepped outside. She placed the bag on the bench. Then looked at me, not with pity, not with manipulation, but with the realization that she'd gone too far. Not just once. Repeatedly. "I didn't mean what I said," she whispered. "I was just angry. And dumb. And trying to impress people who don't even matter." I didn't speak. So she filled the silence. "You always showed up. For everything. Even when no one noticed." And I took that for granted. We all did. Still, I said nothing. Not because I wanted to punish her, but because her apology wasn't for me. It was for herself. A way to lift the weight of guilt. But that weight? It wasn't mine to carry anymore. She left the bag, stepped back, wiped a tear, and asked one last thing. "Will you ever come home?" I looked out toward the lake, the reflection of the trees, the sky, the man I'd become. And then I said softly, "Home was never a place. It was the respect I never got." She nodded, didn't argue, didn't beg. And then she left. I sat on the bench, opened the bag, and stared at the steam rising from a meal made with guilt. And I realized I wasn't hungry. Not for food. Not for comfort. Not for return. Because the appetite they'd taken from me wasn't for revenge. It was for peace. A month turned into 6 weeks. The phone calls faded. The apologies slowed. The silence, the very thing they once mistook as weakness, became the loudest presence in their lives. One morning, I got another letter. This time it wasn't for my wife. Not for my daughter. It was from the bank. A notice. Requesting verification of ownership for the second mortgage. Apparently, someone had tried to refinance the house I paid off 15 years ago, under the assumption I'd sign off like I always used to. They were wrong. I didn't respond. I didn't need to yell. Didn't need to write back with bold words or bitter lines. Because they were starting to realize the same truth that built this entire story. You can't cash in on a man's silence once he's learned how to live without being heard. I took that letter, folded it, and placed it next to the others. Each one a chapter in a book I never meant to write. A record not of rage, but of remembrance. They'd forgotten who I was. So I reminded them, not with noise, but with absence. That same day, I walked into town. Bought myself a second-hand guitar, sat on the back porch of the lodge that had become home, and strummed quietly as the sun set behind the lake. A younger man walked past and nodded. "You play?" he asked. "Not well," I replied. "But I've been too useful for too long. Thought I'd try something just for me." He smiled, kept walking. And that one exchange? It filled more space in me than all those years of unspoken duty ever did. Because for once I wasn't being needed. I was simply being. A few days later, I called my lawyer. Had the house title transferred out of my name. Let them keep the walls. I'd already taken back what mattered. My time, my identity, my silence, and my story. I mailed a simple card. No name, no return address. Just one sentence. "You were right, I was temporary. But I was the only reason it ever lasted this long." Then I lit a fire under the stars and let it burn until nothing but embers remained. No revenge. No last words shouted through doorways. Just the kind of justice only a man who's finally at peace can deliver. Because when you walk away with your soul intact, you've already won.